Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today for our Reasons to Upgrade to Windows 10 webinar. So today we're joined by Doug Elsley from Microsoft and Fabienne Pourquet from Byte Software Services, who will be going through the webinar today.
Okay, thanks a lot. So thanks for your time this morning and joining the call. So the purpose of this is really to go through and talk about some of the details of Windows 10 that may not be directly in your face because just the start menu. There are some fundamental changes that have happened underneath the operating system from a security point of view, really help unlock some of the benefits within inside the enterprise rather than just being something that you've maybe seen in the press and stuff. So that's really the purpose of today is to try and build that message up and help you sort of gain those insights into where we're going. So really this is starting is kind of a recommendation that we've seen some of the comments that we've heard about people putting lots of resources and money and finance and capex projects to actually do a Windows upgrade previously. So there's been a lot of thought that have gone into upgrades. They've been at times potentially quite painful and costly. So we need to make sure that we can upgrade on a more regular cadence and make sure that the impact of doing an upgrade is not as hard as it was before, and it's much more easier for you to actually take and adopt these new versions and upgrades as we go through. And also when we start looking on some other sides of things, some changes have happened within inside the industry around passwords and security. So there's some areas that we need to address around those areas, and we'll spend a little bit more time around how we're addressing some of the security areas within inside Windows 10 to make these things a lot more feasible for you to adopt and start looking at how you can lock down and make your environment a lot more secure. So these are the kind of things that we kind of hear back from customers, and probably hopefully some of those will resonate with you about how you feel about previous upgrades and really how you feel about operating systems moving forward. So give us a little bit of history of where we've come from. I think that this is probably one of the most important slides because we're very unique in this space. You can kind of see the workloads as we've gone on and how the platform's been developed, and there's always been a gap between the different versions of things like Windows Mobile and the Windows operating system, and obviously the Xbox has been a consumer device, but actually on different development paths. And we've now come to a point where Windows 10 actually brings all of those together. So we're looking at a very unique scenario where phone, mobile, tablet, the Internet of Things, the Xbox, which will happen around sort of the late October, November time, will all be running on a core of Windows 10, and that gives us a couple of really unique things. Is you're looking at a single kernel or a single operating system that runs across all of those devices. So you've now got the unique ability to manage those applications in exactly the same way. You can run applications on those devices across them with an app ecosystem where you can develop once and make those applications available across all those stacks. You know, for instance, if you look at something like the BBC iPlayer, even though Android is an open system, there are multiple different versions of the iPlayer because the operating system has been forked off by different people and turned into different variants of the operating system. So having one stable platform that's ubiquitous across all of these devices is a really important step for helping customers actually have, as I said, you know, having applications and manageability across a single platform without having to have multiple tools or multiple different developed environments. And that kind of builds a story, as you can see here, around devices. So whether you're looking at the Internet of Things, a Raspberry Pi, phones, phablets, if you want to call them, or smaller devices, 6, 7, 8-inch devices, convertible devices, laptops, all-in-ones, start building into the Xbox, things like the Surface Hub, the larger things, and the HoloLens, they all have something very, very core and important in common, is the ecosystem that they run on are exactly the same from a development point of view and from a management and security point of view. So having that ubiquity across all of those platforms is really, really important about getting that messaging across. So when we kind of talk about Windows, there's some expectation that people kind of pick up from the press and maybe have played around and used Windows 10 if you've used it either at home through a free upgrade or you've gone into the Insiders program. And most people kind of consume Windows as being it's a UX change. So as we'll see, I've got some screenshots of some bits and pieces in a second, but the start menu's back, it's compatible with existing applications. So if you've got Windows 7 and 8 and 8.1 applications, those will move forward into Windows 10 seamlessly, so you'll have those applications running on the Windows 10. Performance is a bit quicker. We've made some changes in security, and I'll cover those a little bit deeper. And then as you build up some of the consumer store, if you've seen some of the adverts on the television, things like Cortana, our digital assistant, not just sort of reminding you and giving you information back on your phones and devices, but when you bring that into the corporate world, actually using it to do things like business intelligence. So connecting something like Cortana into Office 365 and using the wealth of information that you have in there from a business intelligence point of view. Actually, the enterprise reasons of using Cortana are completely different, slightly than what you'd see from the consumer, just asking you if you want to sort of, where's my local restaurant kind of thing. So Cortana expands into that scenario. Windows Hello, you may have seen some of the adverts on the TV where they're talking about the new age of children standing in front of PCs and logging them in, using facial recognition, using biometrics. I'll spend a little bit of time on this a little bit later on as well to give you some more details around that. But really, it's around the security elements of how we've changed underneath the covers some of the way that we interact with the PC from a security point of view and from biometrics. If you look at Windows as a whole, and even if you go back to XP, where we were doing handwriting recognition on tablets and everything else, so voice, pen, and gesture input has always been part of Windows. And also, if you are a global organization or you have multilingual people within inside your organization, it's quite important to know that you can still use pen, voice, input into Windows in a variety of different languages. So you can still write in Spanish, you can still write in Chinese or whatever on the device, and it will still translate and then work in those forms. So this is not just an English only scenario. If you do have needs to go a lot more global around that, then remember we've been in the enterprise space of natural language and recognition in multiple languages for a long time, and we're just expanding that whole scenario to do around that. The start, as I said, I've got a screenshot of really around what we're doing around the start menu. There are some new technologies coming. Some of them are slightly consumer, which I'll let you know about as well, but more from the enterprise point of view. Continuum, I'll cover that in a second. So this is a new technology where we're able to create a dual persona on devices, so not only have them working as a desktop but also working as a tablet, and then also have the phones working as a phone and also potentially a PC as well. So I'll show you some instances of that. Really from the gaming and Xbox, again, when we get to the Windows 10 scenario, you're able to stream your Xbox down to your Windows 10 device, so you don't need to actually run your Xbox. And again, there's some consumer things around that, but again, that just shows the underlying platform is being exactly the same between those two areas. We've got a new browser called Edge, so we saw that in a lot of corporate installations, people were running Internet Explorer and something like Chrome or Firefox as a Web 2 browser. And we built Edge, which is a brand new HTML5 Web 2 browser to address those areas and give you a very fast browsing experience over and above Internet Explorer. It's got some additional features in there with handwriting, where you can actually write onto web pages and send them out and use gestures and other bits and pieces. But you can see that's really where we see that where most people understand Windows to be. And actually, this is just scratching the surface of some of the changes that we've made, and we're probably, in the next sort of 20 minutes, going to dive a little bit into it a bit more. So just to give you the confidence that your users who have come from Windows 7, or even if they move to Windows 8 or 8.1, give them the confidence in the interface. So you can see here is a screenshot on the left hand side. You can see that there is a start menu back. The division of tiles down the middle you can remove if you want to, so you can just have a start menu experience, but also you can now start to see the interaction if you have used Windows 8 and 8.1. Those common modern or universal applications are still available to you, and can still be updated with those live tiles and a familiarity to you with inside the interface as well. So again, confidence building, just to let users know that they still got the muscle memory of the start button in the bottom left hand corner. It still launches and shows the applications that they can go and launch, plus there's a new world that you can go into. So if you've not seen that from a Windows 7 point of view, or if you've come from Windows 8, actually seeing the hybrid between the two of them is a really nice stepping stone for them to understand what they're doing. So again, a confidence thing that there's not a lot of training for users to adopt Windows 10. But focusing more really around the business, so we've kind of dropped into silos. So security, innovation, operations, and new devices, and we're going to kind of pick on those buckets and start to build onto them. And we were talking earlier about this thing called Continuum. So on the three pictures on the left-hand side, this is a PC or a laptop that's in a docking mode. So using it in a standard Windows method where you've got the start menu and everything else. And with these hybrids, if it's a Surface Pro or other devices that come from other manufacturers, if you can disconnect the keyboard, when you disconnect the keyboard, it automatically understands that you've disconnected the keyboard and will then prompt you, if you want it to, or just go into this mode automatically, will then go into a tablet mode. So we'll then go completely full screen, so you can see you still got all the start menu, you still got all your applications that you're using. It's just the form factor of how you're using this device is now changed from being a desktop-like device into now a tablet-like device. And again, if you then dock it back into the workstation, it will again go back into a desktop mode where you can still use it with a mouse and keyboard, where you would expect to see it in that form. On the right hand side, the third one along is just showing that you can go into portrait and landscape mode with these, like a digital clipboard scenario. The fourth picture on the right hand side is showing a Windows 10 phone plugged into a device on the desktop, and these have been announced and launched. And you can now see that when I plug my Windows phone in, actually what appears on the screen is a full-blown PC experience. So I'm now using Excel that is actually running on the phone. I'm now using it on my desktop, so I could have a terminal server, I could have a Citrix ICA client, I can use all my modern applications and universal applications. So it now has this duality between I can be it still acts as a phone in its docking mode. You can see that the phone interface is still there, but you're using the applications on the phone. And if you look closely enough, on the bottom left-hand corner of the PC screen, you can see a start menu. So it will work exactly like a normal Windows PC will, because it is running Windows 10 and you've got mouse and keyboard plugged in with USB or Bluetooth. So these are some of the innovations that are coming with having this common platform between these. So Continuum, certainly something to look out for and get some more information on in the future. And that also builds into things like universal applications. So you can see here an application has been developed once and is available across all those platforms. So large screen, smaller screen, and into phone, and it's managing itself to do that. And builds the form factors. And something like Outlook, there is a universal application for Outlook, and you can see that this is exactly the same code, the same application that is running on these two different devices. And that's important because now organizations are, if you're thinking about designing applications, you develop once and those applications are available across all the form factors, a common user experience, a common user UI, and they get to know how to use these applications really, really seamlessly and work across these devices. So making sure that users are able to consume the data that's being delivered down to them. So as we start build, so that's from an interface point of view to make sure that we've got the confidence for users to use them across these devices. But really from a security point of view, things have moved on from where we were, even like 5-10 years ago, and are moving backwards. So things are getting a little bit more serious around people are doing attacks. And if you look at something like Sony, Sony were attacked, as we're probably all aware of, it is in the press, but they were unaware that people were streaming films and data and contract information out of their organization for, probably a year and a half before they even knew that these things were going on. And a lot of the failings of this came down to, it was down to a password that was being known. So it's using a technology called pass the hash, or trying to elevate user profiles up to administrative standards and then up to domain administrative standards. So we see passwords as being a real threat moving forward, as they're legacy technology, but they're being used more and more by hackers and attackers to try and create vulnerabilities and get into systems. And it's not just a Windows and Microsoft thing, it's everyone's having these scenarios. So if we look back at Windows 7, which was obviously very secure at the time when it was released and when the operating system is being built, we now have come into this new era of where we need to start thinking about different ways of managing identity. And again, we've talked around things like Windows Hello, so using facial recognition, not just using a picture, i.e. a 2D picture, but also using 3D, using infrared cameras, so you can get a better picture between, so for instance, we've put identical twins together, and using our camera technology, we can still see the differences between identical twins. If you're looking at iris recognition, fingerprint recognition, all of those parts are now being built directly into the operating system to unlock biometrics as a new form factor of securely logging into your machine. Also, things like Microsoft Passport is now starting to take away passwords and start using the encryption hardware devices inside modern devices. So if you've heard of something called a TPM chip, a Trusted Platform Module, it's a hardware device that lives in the platform and allows us to lock data at a hardware encryption layer rather than using passwords that again can get hacked and moved across the network. We also have things called enterprise data credential protection, and again that ties into making sure that we're not using passwords anymore. We want to try and eliminate passwords moving forward and move to this new modern style of using biometrics and multi-factor authentication as a way of authenticating yourselves. When we start looking at data, things like BitLocker, hopefully you're already aware of that, so that's drive and disk encryption. Software that you get with Windows. We've added something called enterprise data protection. I'll touch on that very, very quickly in a second, but this is us now putting encryption around enterprise data at a file level. So now we can almost segregate personal and corporate data and containerize it or lock it with encryption and certificate keys to actually bring those things together. Things like rights management, you may already be aware of, where you can then put additional privileges around how people can use the data once they've opened it. So can they save, or can they print out or file save as, for instance. We've also built some hardware management and protection around the devices. So not just worrying about the operating system and the software, but actually using the hardware to start building further encryption methods and detection methods about making sure that the machine is clean on the way on the boot up, so nothing else can get in and hack the operating system, so key loggers and things like that. So we try to make sure that we're very, very clean on our boot process. Also being able to defend some system hardware, system core processes like login processes and other services like that, we can now run in a miniature hypervisor. So we've now got hardware separation between, even if the device gets compromised, they can't take control of our services. So hardware-based isolation is a way that we're looking into that as well. So all of these come in, if you've heard of things like UEFI before, the User Extensible Firmware Interface, which is the new BIOS. So if you looked at BIOS previously, these kind of technologies are starting to enable these things to happen. And this is really just a view. Again, there's a splash on the screen saying early designs. This is not final UI. These are some things that are coming in the very near future. So you can see here that you've got protected data at a data level, and this means that actually if I copy that file off onto a USB stick and take it home, I cannot open that document with any other application other than the corporate application that understands how to unencrypt that data. So we've now got another layer of defense that you can put around it. So that's running at this at a hardware platform level, but also on a per application level. So here you can see that we're able now to move data in between applications and block them. So here you can see that we're blocking the cut and paste or the movement of data between a trusted application and a non-trusted application. And then also we understand that if there is a reason that you need to go and push this information out, then there's an audit trail that can go behind that too. So you're able to pick up audit trails of what's happening around that. We're taking identity into the next level as well. So previously you look at things like work group for machines and domain join machines. We've now created something called a cloud domain join or Azure Active Directory domain join machine. And really this is bringing the levels of where we can start to bring these two things together and create a hybrid where the machine can still get in and be authorized to the network but doesn't need to be fully domain joined. So part of the process that you will go through will be to go through things like multi-factor authentication, so sending out digit codes, and then having control and management using MDM. So you may use MDM if you're using Apple and Android devices with inside your organization for BYOD. We've now got MDM built into this cloud domain join with MDM management with inside Windows and Windows 10 mobile, where you can then start building policy around the devices themselves. So the enrollment will go through, unlock things like biometrics, and then you will get a build of the machine that you're automatically logged into. So again, without having to do a full domain join, you can do this from a machine that's a new build that's running Windows Professional, for instance, and then do a cloud domain join and still have access within inside your organization. And that's enabled with things like MDM management. So you can see that MDM is now supported as a management protocol with inside there, and it just means that you can still continue doing what you used to do. So if you're doing group policy and all the other things that you would do before, you can continue to do that, but we've now added another layer of mobile device management into Windows 10. And remember, when we talk around Windows 10, we're talking about mobile platforms, phones, tablets, as well as PCs and desktops and everything else. So now you can enroll devices You can build things like Wi-Fi profiles. You can deliver client certificates down to devices, VPN profiles, per app VPNs. All of these things are now without having full management, so without putting a full management client, these MDM management capabilities are now built directly into the operating system. So these are a clientless way of managing. So if you're using something like Windows Intune, or you're using Microsoft Intune, or you're using the Enterprise Mobility Suite, or you're using other MDM providers like AirWatch or Mobile Iron, they will still be able to manage these devices because the MDM protocol underneath it allows us to manage them, because there's not an agent that does it. It's now built directly into the operating system. So again, think of a phone, or think of a PC, and you can now manage your PC much like you would a phone or a tablet, if you think of other vendors doing that. And then also now think of your PC as you are able to manage it like a phone, or your phone like a PC. So all of these open standards are now available across all of those ubiquitous platforms, and again that gives you the reasons of why it's important to see Windows 10 in its raw form running across our mobile devices as well as our Windows devices, and really important to see that working. And these are going to get further enhanced. This is the next level of how we're going to manage devices, and start using mobile device management as a protocol moving forward. So most of the questions come around, okay, we're at Windows 7 today, or at Windows 8 or 8.1 today, or even probably at XP potentially. How do we get for this, and what deployment choices do we have in front of us? So you can continue to do exactly what you do today. So if you've got a process where you build Windows 7 images, whether you wipe the machine and start again, or whether you've got a configuration manager or electronic software distribution mechanism of doing automatic updates and using scripting, you can do exactly the same thing with Windows 10. Nothing changes at all. We don't change anything like that at all. But now we are able to add additional ways of moving forward with this. So things like in-place upgrades. So now if you've got a Windows 7 machine, or Windows 8 or 8.1, we will actually do an in-place upgrade. And what that really means is we will keep the user data and applications and everything intact on the machine, and then just upgrade the operating system around it. So if you've got other tablet devices or phones at home, and you know when it downloads it just kind of goes away, the screen goes away, doing an OS upgrade, you just log back in again and you're back into everything that you've set up being exactly the same. That will now happen. So if you've got Windows 7 deployed, or 8 or 8.1, then you can do an in-place upgrade of your existing systems and then just take advantage of Windows 10, just moving forward with that. There are some caveats that if you're going from x86 to x64, then you obviously need to do a replacement build, because that's not a direct upgrade. But as long as you're keeping the platform the same and the BIOS configuration, then these will just automatically upgrade for you. And it is a way, and that's the method that we're using going forward, is doing this in-place upgrade to deliver stuff down. And then also we've enabled something called provisioning. So we're able now to build miniature packages that you can drop onto machines and change the configuration of machines. So you're able to potentially uninstall any software that's come from a shop-bought PC. You're able to configure the machine, so you can take a raw build machine and then just drop these packages onto them very, very quickly to change their state and configuration. So for instance, you may want to move a machine from Windows Professional to Windows Enterprise, and you used to have to do a complete rebuild of the machine at that point, but now we can just upgrade it and enable those features in place without having to rebuild your machine. So some of those tasks that you had to do before are now very simple tasks that you can just automatically go and do. And then when we start talking about doing upgrades, there are a number of different ways where we recognize that the marketplace is going. So consumer devices, we're going to keep up to date all the time. New features with Windows 10, they're going to get the latest updates on a regular cadence. We also understand that business users and businesses may want to slow that pace down a little bit, do some change management control, understand really what's happening from an upgrade point of view, and then phase it in as they want to. So we've got a way to do business users, and I'll explain that in a second. And then also we understand that there are going to be mission critical systems that are going to require you to have a very specialized system. So if they're air traffic control or running within outside a hospital, you don't want that system changing on a regular basis. So we've got a mechanism to make sure that we are keeping the OS at a build level and not updating it and refreshing it on a regular basis. So to give you an insight to how we do things, so previously we used to have these technology adoption programs for organizations, and they would go out and test the operating system and then we'll kind of release it out. So now what we're doing is we now got engineering builds, so internally we have builds. We also then, once we have those builds, we roll them out inside Microsoft. So we test things for you. So we've got a variety of different hardware, different applications, and we put out all of our telemetry back into the build process. We then have something called a Windows Insider program. If you've not heard of this, it may be worth you investigating, getting involved in this. The Windows Insider, we're currently about just over 8 million people who are out testing Windows at this early stage or a later stage in the process, but really going out more public. And again, a variety of different hardware, variety of different applications and software, and we're getting all of this information back, not personal information, just around how the device is working, what's not working, are there driver issues, and we collect all this information. So we're gathering all intelligence all the way that we do this. We then roll it out to the general public. So once we've got that, we've got a build down, we're now into hundreds of millions of people. So since Windows 10 was released, I think the last status is we're over 110 million people who are actively using Windows 10. So again, all of this telemetry data about the hardware that they're using, if it's having any issues or any potential issues with applications that we're seeing, we can fix these things really, really quickly and get this intelligence back. And at that point, we then create a branch for business. And once you have this branch for business, you know that it's gone through a whole load of regression testing with people with hardware, with applications that we're in a really, really confident point that you've got a really good build to run inside your organization. But then you're able also to roll it out in a stage process inside your organization. So you're able, if you want to take earlier releases inside your IT department, for instance. Maybe a next release may go out to 10 people inside each department, etc., etc. So you can actually build out your own profiles of how you do your deployments inside your organization, and you control that, and you can bring all of that ring-based or build-based deployment staged across using controlled, what's the word I'm looking for? Controlled change management control workflow processes. So you can see this is kind of a build-up of what we've been talking about already. So internal builds, verifications, CB stands for current branch, CBB stands for current branch for business. So these are releases. And you can see that the other things that we've added onto this is something called long-term service branch, or LTSB. And LTSB is for those mission critical machines that aren't going to take regular cadence and updates around this. So you can see how the builds drop in. And as we build this thing up, you can see that actually we may have, this looks a little bit confusing, but bear with me with it, is we can have lots of different releases all out at the same time. And this is where you've got the choice to either take releases on, but you can see all of these current branch and current branch of business have a shelf life, or they have an existence life, and you can defer this off, so you can actually be potentially 12 months you could have the release of a current branch of business before you even start deploying it. So you've got like 12 months of accurate testing. If you don't want to go down that route, you've got something like the long-term service branch at the bottom that gives you a longer release cycle. So long-term service branch will be available for 10 years from a support point of view, and it won't have regular updates in the background as it's moving through. So just to be aware of those. And just to keep us on time and just make sure that we cover the licensing and then get to your questions, because that will probably raise a few questions. I've put some slides in at the back of them around how we address certain areas with inside from a cost management point of view, things like password resets. So if we can eliminate passwords, there are cost savings that can go around them. If we can address things like having to patch and rebuild machines all the time, then there are costs within that can be reduced within inside that. You know, leakage of data, protection against cybercrime, all of these things are now built into the operating system that you can take advantage of, and there are cost savings that you can actually align to these to make a business case if you want to. You know, something like, you know, we knew the cost from upgrading from XP to Windows 7 was a huge amount of money, and different per organization using Gartner stats here, but there is a cost. So if we can do this management in place upgrade that's a seamless upgrade, and we've been working on this technology for a long time because we've been listening to customers about the pains that they go through from an upgrade point of view, and the fact that it's, you know, it's a huge project to undertake, then to make that a much more seamless upgrade process, I take, for instance, I take about 3 Windows builds a week because I'm on an internal build cycle, but I literally leave my machine alone for 5 minutes, it rebuilds, comes back, I just log back in again and carry on working. So other people, that's the kind of experience that you'll go through. You'll probably, with some of the builds, you may have to, you know, just let the machine rebuild itself. It may take 5 minutes, or depending on what state of the build that you're on, it can take different times between them on the amount of changes, but it just refreshes and you just log back in again, and all your applications, all your data, everything is just back how it was. Nothing's changed from that point of view, except the OS has been upgraded automatically for you by doing that. So as I said, these slides we can make available to you, but there are cost savings that sit around those. So what I'm going to do now is probably hand over back into, because we're now going to start looking at things like Windows 10 Enterprise and things like software assurance and some of the benefits around that, and hand back over to the licensing specialist with Inside Bytes to take us through the last bit, and then we can pick up some of the questions at the end of it if my part's raised a few more questions.
Good morning. So I'm going to talk to you about the licensing for Windows 10, and the first thing we're going to have a look at is the editions. So from an edition standpoint, with Windows 10, you will see the main 3 editions that we usually have. So you have your Home Edition, and that's just really focused for consumers. And we have the Professional Edition, which is available through volume license and through most of the other channels. And then we have the Enterprise Edition, and that's only available through volume license. And then what we see as well is the Education Edition. The Education Edition is a new edition which is only going to be available for academic and charity customers, and will provide the same features as Enterprise with a simplified upgrade and deployment from the Windows 10 Home. The next thing you might have seen as well, and I'm sure you've all heard about it, is that Windows 10 also comes with a free upgrade. And it is free for consumers, goes from Windows 10 to Windows 10 Home. But it is also free for commercial customers. You can, if you have Windows 10, Windows 7, 8 or 8.1 Pro installed, upgrade for free to the Windows 10 Professional Edition. It is free within the first year of release of Windows 10 and will then come into paid upgrades. Just one thing to bear in mind on that though is that it is not a volume license. You won't get that same benefit like re-imaging rights or transfer rights. So if you do have software assurance at the moment, you want to upgrade to Windows 10, probably advise to stick to the upgrade rights as usual. The next thing that we see with Windows 10 is Windows as a service. So Doug's been talking to you through how that works. So the consumer devices for current branch, the business users with the current branch for business, and the long-term service branch for those devices that need to stay on those versions for longer. But what does it mean from a licensing standpoint? So what we see is that with the Windows 10 Home you'll have the current branch. The Windows 10 Professional Edition will have the current branch for business. The Windows 10 Enterprise will have the current branch for business as well as the long-term service branch, and the Education Edition will have the current branch for business. So let's have a look at what that means from a licensing standpoint. So what you'll see first is the current branch for business that will provide you the features, and this will be your Professional Edition. So your Professional Edition will have those feature updates. What you see as well is the long-term service branch. Now the long-term service branch is what you'll have with the Enterprise Edition. So as long as you have software assurance, you'll be able to access both long-term service branch or current branch for business. If you want with the with the Enterprise Edition with software assurance, what you'll then be able to do is either use the current branch for business or go straight from one long-term service branch to another. So with the long-term service branch, you have the Windows Enterprise. If you have it without software assurance, you only have one of those long-term service branch. So that is in effect one version as it used to be with no upgrade rights. So if the license has software assurance, so if you have the Enterprise Edition with software assurance, then you'll be able to use both the current branch for business and long-term service branch. And when your software assurance ends, you will stay on that long-term service branch, that kind of like a version, which is available at that time. And the current branch for business, if you have the Professional Edition, that's what you'll be able to go from one current branch for business to another with the ability to delay them for up to 8 months. So let's take a look at Windows 10 in volume licensing. As we've seen in previous version of Windows, the Windows 10 Professional will only be available as an upgrade in volume license, which means you would need to have a previous license installed on your computer. It will be available as a standalone through Open License and through Select Plus and MPSA, and that, as we've seen, will provide you with the current branch for business. The Windows Enterprise in volume licensing will give you a lot more additional functionality, but if you are looking for even more functionality and benefits, you can purchase it also with software assurance. So again, this is an upgrade license. You wouldn't need a base license, and you will be able to have the long-term service branch, and the current branch for business will be available exclusively to active SA customers. Now, talking about software assurance with the Enterprise Edition, I'm not going to go through all of the features. Doug has gone through some of them earlier, but the main thing that we see is MDOP, which is now included with software assurance. So that's the addition of Microsoft Desktop Optimization Pack to software assurance, and that will allow you to manage, create, and protect your virtual desktop environments. So what that means is if you're renewing your software assurance or you're purchasing new Windows licenses with software assurance today, MDOP will be included. And what we see as well with Windows 10 is the ability to license Windows 10 per user. So traditionally, Windows has been licensed per device. What that means is that every device on which you install Windows or from which you access Windows, if Windows is installed on a network server, every single device must be licensed. If we look at the per user license, what you can do is instead of licensing every single device, you can license the user. So we know that today users tend to have more devices. So they may have their desktop, a laptop, iPad, and other devices. Instead of having to license each and one of those devices, you can just license that one user, and they can use Windows, access Windows, and install Windows on all those devices. You do need to have Windows 7 or 8 Pro on the primary device of that user to be able to use that. Any of the other devices can be accessing Windows from VDI and install Windows on any of these devices that have Windows 7, 8 or 10 Pro installed. Now what if you don't have a primary device for your user? Or what if your user actually has a primary device which is mainly thin clients? So you may have users that have a thin client but also has iPads and other devices. Well, in that case, what you can purchase is the VDA per user license. So traditionally it was available per device, which means every single device that accesses a virtual desktop infrastructure would require a VDA license. Now we can do that per user, which means that you would license your user and that user can access VDI from any single devices. You can also install Windows on a device for that user, and that device would need to have Windows 7, 8 or 10 installed. What if you already have Windows with software assurance in your agreements and you want to be able to use that per user model? Well, you can still do that with the add-on. The add-on will be an add-on to Windows Software Assurance or to VDA, and that would allow the user of that device to access and install Windows from any other devices. The next thing we see is different ways of purchasing Windows per user. So you can buy that as a standalone, buy an add-on, or what you can do as well if you're looking to use Office 365 and also you're looking to use the Enterprise Mobility Suite to protect and manage those mobile devices and also help you with the data security and better user experience, you can buy all those three products, 365, EMS and Windows Enterprise per user with the Enterprise Cloud Suite, and that will come with a discount. And then one last thing I'm going to talk about is going to be one of the offers that we currently have available for you. So that's an offer that will help you migrate and check compatibility of Windows 10, so help you upgrade to Windows 10 with your environment and with your current applications. We'll be able to come into your estate and using System Center Configuration Manager, we'll be able to provide you with a pilot in place to design your target estates, including operating system, licensing and core applications. We'll be sending you all of the details of this offer along with a recording after this session.
Lovely, thank you very much, Fabienne. So we've had a couple of questions that have come through. So if you have got any more questions, please do feel free to pop those in the questions box now. So I will kick things off and then either Doug or Fabienne can answer those for you. So the first question that we've had is, will Edge ever be able to natively support the Java plugin?
So going into next year in 2016, there'll be Edge extensions. So there will be the ability for you to add further extensions into Edge to allow other. I mean, it's done from a security point of view at the moment. So at the moment, we're locking it down to make sure that no suspicious or malware code can run much the same as other browsers that try to do that. But yes, it will be available as an extension next year.
Lovely, thank you. And the next question, is direct access built into Windows 10 Mobile, which is being released next month?
On the first build of Windows 10 Mobile, it won't be. It will just be on VPN, but there are plans to put DA into mobile in a future release.
Perfect, thank you. And the next question from Andy says, if you have Windows under software assurance and licensed per user, e.g. ECS license, do you still need an RDS cal to access Citrix?
Yeah, you would still need the RDS cal and the Windows Server cal, absolutely.
Lovely, thank you. And John asks, if we have Windows 10 8 Pro desktop licenses purchased through a volume license agreement but without SA, can we upgrade to Windows 10 Pro for free as a wipe and replace OS?
So you can have the free upgrade that's available, but you'd have to go through the actual upgrade, through the upgrade process that's available within that OS. If you wanted to upgrade using normal kind of wipe and reimaging, etc., you would need to go through volume license purchase. You could purchase Windows 10 upgrade to do that as well.
Lovely. And the final question from Andy. Windows 10 upgrade license requiring base license. I presume this includes OEM base license.
Yeah, so long as it's a professional edition, any previous version, whether it's OEM, retail or volume license, that will be fine.
Lovely. So that's all of the questions that we've had through today.